Hey, so I was reading, actually, I am reading it's a little bit of Bible study, and I was reading Isaiah 20, and I came across something that was so good. God gave me insight and revelation, and that's been my prayer. I said, ask God when I read the word, God, give me fresh revelation, so that way what I'm reading, I can apply to my life. So give me principles and revelation from your word so that I can apply it to my life. Because listen, I want to move forward in the things of God. So I'm just reading something I had. Psalms 37:7. Okay. So it says, at that time the Lord spoke by Isaiah, son of Amoz, saying, go, loose the sackcloth from off your loins and take your shoes off your feet. And he had done so, walking around stripped to his loincloth and barefoot. And the Lord said, as my servant Isaiah has walked comparatively naked and barefoot for 3 years as a sign and forewarning concerning Egypt and concerning Cush, which was Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptian captives and the Ethiopian exiles, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. And they shall be dismayed and confounded because of Ethiopia, their hope and expectation, and Egypt, their glory and boast. And the inhabitants of this coastland, the Israelites and their neighbors, will say in that day, see, this is what comes to those in whom we trusted and hoped, to whom we fled for help to deliver us from the king of Assyria. But we, how shall we escape captivity and exile? And what God showed me is this: we have to be very mindful. First of all, he said we have to always stay sober in mind, making sure that we are able to discern when the enemy presents something to us that is not of God. And sometimes the things can be okay, but we have a tendency, or the enemy will dangle a carrot or something flashy, right? Shiny and flashy, because we like shiny, flashy things in our face. And if we're not careful, we will look to the thing, look to the person to deliver us and save us, when we should look to God all along, right? So it said that Israel and their neighbors looked to the Egyptians and Ethiopia to save them from the Assyrian king, when they should have been looking to God, right? And so this is what God, I wrote something down. This is what God said to me. He said, if we aren't sober in mind and discerning, we will allow the devil to lead us away from God into sin and shame, right? Because what did they say? He said, and they shall be dismayed and confounded because of Ethiopia, their hope and expectation. So while we're thinking that this physical, so another person or this physical thing is going to be our hope, is going to be the thing that save us, God is saying no. Like, when you trust in anything outside of me, you're going to end up being confounded, confused, dismayed, and despair, because you put your trust in something else other than me. When the Bible clearly says, trust in me, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto your own understanding, but acknowledge me in all your ways, and I shall direct your path. So basically what they did was they trusted, they were leaning on their own understanding to trust in, right? Ethiopia, Ethiopia and Egypt, instead of trusting in God. And it caused them to go back into captivity, right? So God is like, no, we can't do that. It doesn't matter how desperate you feel like you are for help. And I have had a really hard lesson in my own life of trusting people, trusting man over looking to God. It will mess you up every time. I'm telling you, it'll mess you up. So, okay, so instead of making God our hope and expectation and boasting of him, being led away from God will cause us to begin to boast and hope in other things, bringing sin into our lives. And He said we can't be wise in our own eyes. We must always look to Jesus and keep on the full armor of God. So we have on the full armor of God, then we will be able to see and know and discern when the enemy is trying to distract us and throw us off course, because that's his job. So yes, we make decisions and people say we can't always blame everything on the enemy. No, we can't, because we have a right to choose. But the devil knows, like, he uses the same tactics, right? Distractions, things that look good. And if we're not constantly in the word of God, if we don't have on the full armor, then that's when we start to second guess ourselves, just like Eve did, right? When we don't have on the full armor of God, we will begin to second guess ourselves, because the enemy is cunning. So he won't always tell a flat out lie, but he will change it to make you doubt what God has said. That's how we have to know the word. And we got to keep on the full armor. And in Ephesians chapter 6, 11 through 17, it tells us to keep on the full armor. It says, put on God's whole armor, the armor of a heavy armed soldier, which God supplies, that you may be able to successfully stand up against the strategies and the deceits of the devil. That's the whole purpose of it. We have to. So y'all can read it for yourself to know what the full armor of God is. But we have to, so that way we can be able to discern and stand up against the wiles of the devil. Because he's going to come. There is not a time in our life that the enemy is not going to try to distract or deceive us. He is a deceiver. He is the father of lies. That's what he does, right? And he knows the ones who he can tempt, and the ones who he'll be like, oh, okay, well, we already know they planted and rooted, and we ain't gonna be able to get them. But if he knows that he can throw us off course, then he will do everything that he can. And so, don't get me wrong. I want to make sure I didn't say the wrong thing. We all get tempted at some point or another. But what I'm saying is, if the enemy knows that we're weak, and we open up the door and give him legal access to us when we don't do what God requires of us, when we open the door to sin. So anyway, if we don't look to God and keep on the full armor, we will become ensnared or entrapped by the very thing we sought out. Okay, my camera cut off, but we will become ensnared or entrapped by the very thing we sought out instead of seeking God. Therefore, we shall always seek God first. And that's exactly what happened to them. They were putting their hope in somebody else to rescue them from the king of Assyria instead of trusting God. And we've seen time and time again in the Old Testament where the children of Israel were given opportunity after opportunity. God was really clear about what he was saying, but it's the temptation. I don't know what it is. We have to constantly die to our flesh, because our flesh is like, it's a beast. It is a beast. And for whatever reason, it does not want to submit. And we have to make our flesh submit under or unto the obedience of Christ, right? And God. So that was my mini Bible study.